recording. So this is the collective meeting on Friday, the 3rd of August. It's a game of two halves today. First of all, delighted to have Ron join the call, and that will be our first item to understand what Ron is about and how we might find opportunities to collaborate. And then the second part of the call is about our governance of the collective, to review where we are on that front at the moment and design for us to improve it by the end of August. So just a quick round robin, 20 seconds each if you may. It would be great to have some introductions here. Actually, Ron, as you're our guest, perhaps we should start with you. Feel free to take a little longer than 20 seconds yourself.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it, Philip. My name is Ron Kim, and I am the state representative out of New York. I represent parts of Queens, and I'm serving in my third term, about to go into my fourth term in the state legislature. So that's a total of 6 years as an insider of government, but I spent the last 15 years at local and state government in different capacities. And I started out in politics because I grew up as an immigrant in New York, and I saw how hard it was for my parents trying to run a local mom and pop store. And when I go back to that, very block where there used to be about 7 small businesses on this tiny block, now it's completely changed and gone. And now there's a Chase and a big chain store supermarket that's occupied that block, which is very common and, to see everywhere in places like New York City. But in places like the outer boroughs that I represent, I thought that we would always be able to protect that kind of extraction, But these days we're seeing more Targets and more chain stores and more Amazon locker rooms pop up, even in the outer boroughs where I live. So it's really compelled me to dive deeper into this space and figuring out what I should be doing as an insider to make our local communities more resilient, and which led me to this place now. So I'll dive into a couple other things later on, what I'm working on, but that's my quick 20 seconds.
Thanks. And of course, just for those on the call who might not know, Douglas Rushkoff is the connection, which is why we're speaking to Ron today. So if I just pick on my screen, if you could introduce yourself in terms of getting Ron up to speed, that'd be fantastic. Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Taylor. I work for a open source collaborative engineering organization where we have lots of members, company members who give us money and engineers. We use the money to hire more engineers, and then we do engineering once for everyone and share it. So it's a true collaborative organization. I've been involved with this for a long time, starting off with the High project because I knew Philip in a previous role, and then moving into the Digital Life Collective.
Thank you, Steve. Graham?
That sounds fascinating, Steve. I never knew that. You must tell me. You must tell me the name of that organisation. I can find out more. Okay, so my name's Graham. What do? I have fingers in pies in the cooperative world in the UK primarily. So I earn my daily bread doing just sort of advice and support around open source CRM system, and when I'm not doing that, I do other much more interesting things, which are about sort of, trying to do useful, progressive things in terms of cooperative development and solidarity economy stuff, which might interest you, Ron.
Thanks, Graham. I love the way you undersold your cooperative expertise there so beautifully. Yeah. You need to pitch that higher, mate.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I'll work on the speech.
Jim, how would you introduce yourself, mate, down in Florida?
Well, in principle, or in technically, I'm retired, except that I'm working for the ArtChain.coop, which is my dream of a world computer that's green and is algorithmically constrained to obey my rules. And so I'm active in governance in ARChain, and ARChain is well funded. We want to put ARChain in every community. We're just launching an ARChain EU cooperative, and people are working on an Asian cooperative and an African cooperative. And we have members who are working in Tucson, Arizona, and the Tampa Bay area here on creating ARChain cooperative meetups anyway, which ARChain is looking to get physical locations all around the world, people face-to-face working together. And we have a decentralized budgeting and reward system, which is very experimental and a little bit shaky, but it's really working. We pay each other. Okay.
So if there's any links that you think Ron should follow, then please whack them in the chat, and that would be awesome. So that leaves me with one little screen on my screen, which is Michael, who's in London, as opposed to normally on Vancouver Island, I believe, and Les, who is normally UK bound. Chaps?
And we are in Wales this evening. We've just been in Bristol for the day. I'm normally in Canada, and I normally work on community currencies, network currencies that basically pick up the slack, unemployed labor, unresolved resources in the community. And I'm traveling through the UK at the moment, and I'll be back in Canada in a couple of weeks. Over to Les.
Hi, I'm Les. I'm based in London. I run a couple of social enterprises working around fresh produce and environmental recycling. And I'm big into permaculture design, sociocratic decision-making, and open money. And I'll hand you back to Philip.
Well, thanks for the brevity there. Marvellous. So, I'm just trying to think. What we probably need to do is make sure Ron understands why we exist, and then we need to understand what's keeping Ron awake at night, and see if we can collaborate or cooperate in any way going forward. So let me just fill in 60 seconds the elevator pitch, if you like, for the collective. Ron, we have a situation where markets have been failing us, and to various extents, governments have either been ignorant or complicit. And we need to sort out some of the things that haven't quite gone as well as we thought they might have gone in terms of the internet and the web. If you compare where we are today with this digital infrastructure versus the original, almost utopian aspirations for it, it's a huge, huge gulf, to the point where actually the situation of massive centralization, state surveillance, surveillance capitalism, it's all a far cry from where we thought we might get with a decentralized, empowering, agentic sort of digital fabric. And so if the only response is to cooperate, well, then we started a cooperative. And the interesting thing about that, which I'm sure you may have come up in conversation with Douglas, is that as we seek to try and work with digital technologies that are self-sovereign, to Jim's point earlier, that are defined by and serve purely an individual defined by a self-sovereign identity, as we try and work out what those technologies, those trustworthy technologies, might look like on an individual basis, immediately, by corollary, you also can't help but work out how these technologies might then help us cooperate better in any variety of endeavours, whether it's a small business, a cooperative, a small town, a city, a school. So you can't help but look at the self-sovereign technologies alongside the platform cooperativism, as it's become known. And that's what floats our boat. And we try and find ways as a cooperative of 140 odd members to see how we might move this agenda forward cooperatively faster than otherwise. So that's our mission, I think, as it's currently described. And we've had a few successes recently, not least working with the Internet Archive this week at the Decentralized Web Summit that they hosted in San Francisco, where I think we were the only partner with a permanent room there for the 2 days, where we were helping the entire ecosystem map itself, if you like, so that it can understand who's doing what, how, based on what reliance dependencies there are, where there's big gaps that no one's attending to, all of that sort of stuff. So that's a major piece of our work that is quite exciting, I think. Now, what was the conversation with Douglas like, where he then said, I need to connect you to the Digital Life Collective?
Yeah, so I went to Doug because, I'm trying to put together a couple of ideas and proposals to really help change the mindset of New Yorkers and the New York subculture that is perhaps worse than anywhere in the world. It's driven by ultra competitiveness, very top down, male dominated, super egos, win-lose dynamic from the moment you enter a New York City public school. It's by design to prepare people to be in a cutthroat environment. Can you hear me okay, Phil?
Perfectly, thank you.
Okay. And so I'm sure, so I have a couple of proposals to try to get people to understand that the world, like you said, is not functioning well. Our debt-driven, society is literally, killing us every single day and incentivizing every wrong behavior there is from the federal on to local governments. So how do we structurally give this bottom-up movement as an insider the kind of voice that we need at a place by design, in a place like New York, where it feels humans' competitive nature. So I came up with a couple of ideas to push the concept of community currencies. We've launched the first state-sponsored pilot programs to put 10 community currency designs throughout the state of New York. That was the first bill that I put forward. And the next bill that I'm trying to put together now is to create the country's first state-backed Office of Financial and Economic Resiliency that would have a full-time cooperative economist and a resiliency officer to help design and go to community and figure out what the needs are and what the local resources are, and build robust, independent, local economies. So that's something that I'm focused on putting together now, and that's how I met up with Douglas to get his feedback and to see, who's out there, what are people doing, and where I can go to learn about, what are some of the other groups and what are some of the initiatives that's out there that's behind this movement. Because under the current paradigm, whether you're a capitalist or a socialist, and that's really the two big paradigms that are in our faces, but it's all fundamentally still based on centralized labor and centralized companies to produce as efficiently as possible for this world. And that system itself, whether you're a socialist or a capitalist, is not working. But there is a movement like yourselves that's based on a collective democracy, right? A co-op, and that is the movement that I want to try to be part of and try to give a voice to. So that's where I'm coming from.
It's not an either or, right? It's a both and I think that's something that we really struggle to get across sometimes. As you were saying, it just reminded me of a quote that's over 100 years old now, by a guy called Franklin Roosevelt. And it's competition has been shown to be useful up to a certain point and no further. But cooperation, which is the thing we must strive for today, begins where competition leaves off. I mean, he could see it was a both and instead of an either or over 100 years ago. And here we are, 2018, still trying to work out how cooperation fits into the American psyche. Or the British psyche. Unless it made it sound like that we know what we're doing. So, in terms of the practical steps forward, where are you at the moment? Are you at the conceptualizing stage? Are you at the? I understand the values that we're working to, and these are the kind of stakeholders we could get involved, and these are the kind of programs we could run. Or
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second.
No problem.
You okay? Yeah. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. But why do I need to go? Yeah. Oh. Okay. Sorry, guys. Hold on.
No problem.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What was the question? Oh.
I was just saying, whereabouts are you at the moment? Are you at the conceptualizing stage, or are you
Sure.
more at the developing a list of stakeholders you need to work with, and tactical programs of action, or whereabouts?
Yeah. So we have the language of the actual bill. We're open to. We kept it as open and generic as possible. Of the actual bill, so we have the language in there, and we're trying to put together stakeholders and validators that can help advocate to get this done. So we're in the process of introducing the legislation that would create an Office of Financial Resiliency at the top financial regulating office in the state of New York, which is the Department of Financial Services, and DFS. And DFS has traditionally been an agency that is focused on making sure that markets are running efficiently as possible. They license things out. They make things more competitive, basically, for corporations to exist in our markets. I had thought that would be a great place to counterbalance a traditionally designed system that only measures efficiency. But now I'm trying to change the culture of now we need to really focus on resiliency. To counterbalance a system that was poorly designed in the first place. So we're looking to put together stakeholders and validators that can come with us and really advocate to a very powerful executive by design who would never want such a system in the first place, because that's how politics is. Because it's usually run by people who are ego alpha white men that are in it for central power, right? Once they're in it, so why would you want to give it up, right? So we're trying to have a grassroots voice to make the case that if you really want a long-term goal of a place like New York and beyond to be self-sustainable, you need to be part of this, or we're going to get left behind once the next financial crisis hits.
Jim, you've got a virtual hand up. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff you're doing, Ron. It's wonderful, and I think you're a great test case for the Digital Life Collective in its efforts to offer collaboration as a service. The one central theme that is in the digital collection is cooperation at scale and how we do that. And you're doing a lot of the right stuff, certainly. I think we also need to consider disincentives of scale, as well as the incentives for decentralization built into the system, which, fortunately, the alternate currencies, open money and these things give us
Mhm.
the ability to create any kind of economy we want. And the blockchain technology gives us the certainty that our ledgers are, and other distributed ledger technologies, that that nobody is corrupting the records.
And
Can I just jump?
So, Michael, you didn't mention your 30 plus years expertise in open money and local exchange trading systems. So I just thought I'd drop that in there for context for Ron. You kind of skirted over it, if I'm honest. But now,
I tend to be modest about my modest achievements as well. But I just wanted to point, Ron, to recent remarks that Douglas has made about the weaponized nature of legal tender money. That it's basically a very sharp tool. It creates competition. It does not favor cooperation. It's a very divisive device. And the element of mutual credit systems, closed-loop currencies, is in its form and function cooperative. They don't work unless people are working with each other. That's about all I got to say at this point. Thank you.
So Ron, you're saying that this forgive me because my vocabulary of the political process is lacking. But you said you had some kind of document that is a draft that you then go to the assembly and say, do we enshrine this in law or something?
Right. So so it's a bill draft that would need to go through the process of passing the legislative bodies, both the Assembly and the Senate, and then it will go to the governor's office to make into law. And part of the process, really, I mean, there's bills that's been passed in the legislative body. For instance, universal health care in the Assembly for the last 15 years. We passed it every year, but it never gets advanced because the Senate will never entertain it. So, but part of it is educational. Part of it is having the soapbox for me to take an idea, a proposal, and go door to door and put it out to mainstream media and really advocate for transformative ideas that may not have been part of mainstream narrative. So I've taken that approach to go door to door with this idea. And when I talk about blockchain or community currency, 99.9% of my colleagues have no idea what I'm talking about. You know, I brought up cooperative currency at a local civic meeting, and they automatically looked at me and said, "What is this Chinese guy trying to manipulate currency for America?" Like that somebody actually said that. Like I'm like, that's the kind of mindset that I'm often dealing with. So there's a huge learning curve, even with the public that are negatively impacted every day, that are looking for jobs. Something's clearly not working in our backyard. But when I'm trying to offer and have these meaningful conversations, it's hard. It's hard for people to sometimes wrap their head around what a lateral integration looks like. So I'm trying my best to simplify my message and try to learn as much about successful case studies that are out there that's working, and so I can bring back to my community and to my colleagues and change the narrative that this top-down centralized system is not working, is failing us. Mainstream media is not writing about it, so people don't know about it. So I'm trying my best to give it a voice.
So you're looking to us to see if we can cooperate in making your voice more impactful, more resonant. Is that a straightforward way to describe the short?
Yeah, and I think for my colleagues to understand, this is not me just talking crazy. There's a whole world of people like yourselves from London, Canada, Florida. Like everyone, there's a whole movement behind this. That people care deeply about this. There are countries that are using their own alternative currency, like Marshall Island, and there's there's all sorts of examples out there that they're not aware of. So yes, like I'm looking for a partnership so we can go talk to some of these people who are doubtful of what this is, and and start telling our stories in hopes that we can change that narrative.
Well, you're getting some thumbs up, and I think that's what you do these days as well, isn't it? On a call, just to indicate,
Right.
you know, amazing, violent agreement, perhaps is the not too strong a way of putting it. So, I'm a practical guy. I love meeting people on Zooms and having a bloody good conversation and feeling good. But as an engineer by training, I like to make sure that we've got a list of 2, 3, 4 action points that when we come off this call, we think, right, that's what we're going to do together. Now,
Yes.
it might be that this is not the call because we've just discovered some stuff about each other. Perhaps the next stage is to exchange some information and then get back on a call and see if we can then pick out those 2 or 3 things that we can do together, or perhaps we can get there right now. I don't know. What do people think?
Well, if I can jump in, I mean, I put a couple of links to New York-based organisations that might be of interest to you, Ron, if you've not already hooked up with them. I mean, there is stuff happening in this space, I think, certainly in New York and in other parts of the US. So I guess my question is, how well connected are you into that community already in terms of solidarity economy stuff, evergreen cooperatives, and those sorts of things that are happening?
Yeah, I'm constantly meeting with folks almost every day. So I appreciate any other. But every day I'm also inspired because there's so many other groups that are in this space I wasn't aware of. So I appreciate any groups that you may think I should meet up with.
Okay.
So yeah, and also what I'll do is I'll send over the documents, kind of the outlines, what I'm trying to propose in terms of creating this office, so for everyone to take a look at and review, and maybe we can go from there. Oh, and the next thing that we're also kind of my office, where my team is focused on, is trying to address student debt in America. There's $1.5 trillion of education debt right as we speak. 45 million borrowers are struggling, and we're trying to see if there is a way to bring alternative currencies and our alternative models into the discussion of addressing this debt, because it's a non-collateralized debt, and states have began to use austerity measures to collect on the debt, instead of finding ways to reinvest and help the students out of debt. And I think there's an opportunity to bring in some of these non-conventional way of capturing value and money into the discussion. So we're working on some sort of a white paper, but a lot of this stuff is way above my expertise. So I'm trying to bounce off these ideas to a group of experts that know this space a lot better. So I'd love to share some of the drafts as we move forward with it.
That would be great. I'm just going to come to you, Jim, as you've got your virtual hand up again. But just on that note, just conscious of allowing us 20 minutes to address the second agenda item.
Yep.
No disrespect, Ron.
Yep.
We have a comment in the chat here from Steve talking about some stuff with the Chinese community in California and stuff that Mad Dog is doing Mad Dog is John Mad Dog Hall in South America, Brazil, I believe. So there's some tie-ins there. So what I will do as an action is just open up this is a standard action I take, open up a Google Doc where we can just start bunging some links in to various documents, various web pages to various organizations, so that we can start to bring this conversation to some shape in a documentary form rather than just in a chat and a Zoom recording. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the forefront of a transformation here that it's virgin territory, because decentralization at scale hasn't been successful. There are certain successful examples, but they're not interconnected. They're not working together. They're isolated, and they're generally quite limited in terms of the number of people they can support in most cases. My background in 25 years of research in group systems and collective intelligence has brought me here with these people to address that forefront. And in terms of cooperation as a service, you're like a customer coming to us, and I think we can help you and will help you. And it's great that you're following all these other things, that you're not just depending on us to help you with this, that you're taking a broad brush and you're looking at this. And, my job that I've self-assigned is to try to create connections between these organizations and get them cooperating, okay, on a grander scale. We work with ArtChain, HoloChain, Digital Life Collective, and we have some cross-membership. We have some connections. And, the one thing we've learned is small groups, well-connected small groups is what works. And that governance is not something that we design so much as discover. Okay, you can't control a system until you have a model of it. And we're building this with the social ledger and self-sovereign technology, along with the network map and, the other activity. I'm happy that we've come together, and my action item is to identify ArtChain members in your area that can begin the ArtChain cooperative, which is a model. We're building this decentralized budgeting and reward system there, which can be applied to any community. And we're looking to integrate open money into the social ledger. But what we have so far is good enough to get the basic data that we need. And that's what's important. Once you have the data, you can have all kinds of visualizations, you can have all kinds of other things. The key thing is building in the privacy, and we're working on that.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, that's awesome. And one final comment, unless anyone else is going to put their hands up while Graham's speaking. Graham.
Yeah, just a very quick one. In terms of the journey that people go on when they're trying to get their head around all this sort of stuff, I think, and it's just my experience, is that if you start talking to them about alternative currencies and crypto and stuff like that, then they run away very quickly. Because I think there are other steps down that journey that that they need to go on before that starts to make some sense to them. So I think if I was in your shoes, Ron, I would probably try and think about what some of those interim steps might be that will help people to move along that journey.
Yeah, we're using Play Money
where alternative currencies make more sense to them.
Okay, we start with Play Money. We give people credit for their participation, for their contribution. We don't place a monetary value on it.
This is going to be an interesting conversation to host.
The currencies get value because they have produced value. Until then, they have
I'm not arguing that point. I think what I'm saying is that the whole concept of something like ArtChain or cryptocurrency or whatever it might be is just alien to 98% of people. So they need to start. As with any conversation, you need to start where the other person is. and lead them along that path that you want to take them on.
And it might well be that there's sort of two streams. I'm going to try and do this on my webcam where, there's our Cheney sort of crypto stream over here, open money stream, and then there's the more cooperative 150-year-old sort of understanding of how these things might work. And at some point, the two streams, they do come together, but maybe not this side of Christmas, Jim. Yeah. But it'd be wonderful to get those two streams on a trajectory where they can meet and have a damn good party.
Halloween or something,
Michael.
It's a double spiral, Philip. It's a double spiral.
See, I couldn't do that on the webcam because I couldn't twist my hands around like that. Ron, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to invite you to the G Talk this evening, well, my evening, your middle of the day, and then please just feel free to pile in and put any links in there. I'm sure everyone else on this call will do the same. In there, we'll also see if we can schedule a follow-up in, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks, however everybody's calendars work. I realise August is sometimes a bit of a funny month to get people's calendars working around vacations, but we shall reconvene, sir.
Great, thank you.
Likewise, thank you. Great to meet you.
Yep.
Right, we're going to move the conversation on to the second part, which is, did somebody name August the Self-Organising and Governance Month? I think I did. Whew. I mean, seriously, what's not to like about that? So, just a quick recap on where we are. We had a governance working group in 2017, and it did lots of lovely stuff, and it hosted lots of great conversations, and it was really quite productive, except for the one thing which actually would have been really awesome, which is actually if we'd concreted a governance and self-organising sort of structure process is. So we have that piece of work. We've had some other thinking that's been developed since, and it's fair to say that the situation we find ourselves in middle of 2018 is we need to be a little bit better at doing little things like working out how to allocate what small budget we have, working out who makes decisions about what with what sort of authority. Just fairly straightforward things. So I'm not trying to insist that we bore the ocean by the end of August and have the most perfect approach to governance and self-organisation, but it should be manifoldly more obvious to everybody than it is right now. People just can't make a decision. Laura is just, I'm sure I can speak to her while we're recording, banging her head against the wall saying, how do I get a decision made around here? How do we move this forward? And I'm sure we've all felt that frustration. Any thoughts before we work out how we're going to make that happen this month?
I'm not sure, actually.
No, I would repeat what I said before, that we have to that in order to control the governance, we have to discover it. And I see I think we've been led toward a sociocratic polyarchy and small, well-connected teams. And we have the pseudo, where...
That's the proposal on Lumio, yep.
Where we have a means of delegating authority or missions outlined, and the consent process. Governance by consent means that you consent to it, and if your small team wants to give all the power to one person, fine. If they want to have a consent process, fine. I think we've pretty much agreed that the teams are autonomous. But the the basic decision process, the default is consent. And the stakeholder organization, we have the domains and other stakeholders. And at a higher level, okay, we get consent among the domains. We have a process that's always evolving. It's evolving as we need to. And we look at the hum.org patterns of decentralization. I kind of lost that one, but when we discover how we're working now, and a great way to do that is using the social ledger. If people use the social ledger, it would define our current organization and who's doing what and where the decisions are being made. And once we know what that is, and we can govern it. Okay, and it's meta governance in that we're building the governance as we go along. And this is
now this is a critical point. This is a critical point, Jim, and perhaps in part at least explains why the 2017 work got so far, and then, with no disrespect to all the great effort that went in, fell so short in terms of leaving us with any way that we were going to work. And that is waiting for the technology to help us. I don't believe the social ledger is going to help us achieve the objective this month. It is not ready.
Well, yeah, it won't unless you use it. If you use it, everybody will use it.
It is not ready for prime time use.
In days, we will
ready
have model of the organization and all the activities. In days.
It is not prime time. It is not ready for 143 people to work out how they can work together. Unless there are any dissenting voices on this call, does anybody feel like what they know of the social ledger at the moment, and there are some here more fluent on it than others, it's ready for us to run the collective on from the 1st of September? Because I'm a big fan of it. I want it to work. I'd love to use it in perhaps the odd circle over here and the odd circle over here to help feed back into its development. But as a way to run the entire collective, I cannot personally say I have faith in that as being the way we're going to solve it this month.
I have to agree with that view. I've worked out, I think, how I can get stuff into it. I've got no idea how I might get anything useful out of it. In terms of information that can help me make a decision. That's where I am with it. So effectively, I've stopped using it because it's just a thing that I put stuff into and then it never comes back out again. I'm happy to change that view, but someone needs to give me the documentation that shows me how I can get something useful out of it.
So before we have a debate specifically about the social ledger, are there any other comments from everybody on the call about how to crack our mission this month? I'm putting stuff into the document that I've just shared in the chat here. Feel free to contribute in there as well. Did you just wave your hand again, Graham?
Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
I should.
No worries. Don't apologise.
I've got a hand button over there, haven't I? I've just sort of stepping on it. But
not really needed, but it's 5 on the call.
Well, I think largely what Jim said makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, it does.
So you've got
it's very sensible.
Working on stuff, and they can do what they like. I don't really give a damn how they organise in their group. I might give a damn about groups I'm involved in. But the key thing is how you make decisions at the cooperative level. Yeah. So because you're going to have competing interests for resources, you're going to have ideas bubbling up which don't necessarily align with each other. So you need a sort of an underpinning or top level, depending on which way round your picture is, sort of decision-making forum, and Jim suggested that we use the domains that I think he's referring to, the 2-letter thingies that are used in the MetaMask there, as sort of segments of the organization's activity.
Well, I think if you're going to have a stakeholder layer, it should include all the stakeholders, and that's something you need to consider and organize. But what we have is a direction, and for the corporate, for the co-op wide, our direction is toward a flavor of liquid democracy, and we're taking steps to get that. There's tools that we could use today, maybe, but at some point, we're going in that direction, and I don't think we're gonna. I think it would be absolutely wrong to make decisions this month on things like on specifics. I think that delayed choice, that flexibility, that changing is what always changing the process. It's like in Tom's presentation, there is no best way. Okay, if as soon as you make the rule, you're constraining yourself. You're putting yourself in a box. You can't evolve. You can't. What we can set is direction. Okay.
We have to go further than that, Jim. Direction on the future governance and self-organisation implies that we'll get to it next year. We need, by September, I think probably Laura added this to the document, but please correct me if anyone on this call did. This is, I just said, please add in here what you'd like the objectives or what success looks like. And in the document, I now find the following is written. A member of the cooperative could put forward a proposal requiring a decision. And we would have a clear process by which that proposal is reviewed, debated, determined, and, if it goes forward, subsequently monitored to ensure that, it's enacted, that we achieve success. That is it sounds very simple. It would be very simple if we were command and control and appointed Steve as CEO. That would be dead easy. But then we wouldn't scale to 100,000 members, because who wants to work for Steve, right? So it's we need this network to emerge, but it can only emerge if it has some basic rules that it knows are temporary, but that will work and be respected for the next 6 months while we then work out the next phase. Steve, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I was a bit of ranty then. By this.
I think what Graham said is absolutely right. The key is how to make decisions at the collective level. But there's a little bit more than that. And it's about how to communicate those decisions out to the collective in a way that people understand them and can then act on them. Because I actually think we can make decisions, and we've proven we can make decisions occasionally. It's a bit of a convoluted process, but there are certain decisions that we actually made, communicated out, and then didn't act on, and other things happened. So there's I think we can simplify our decision-making process because we do have one as it's sort of documented. I think the biggest challenge is actually communicating the decisions out to everyone and getting things to be actioned.
Nicely put. So it's quite basic, actually, when you say that. To be honest, when I've been involved in a small group, perhaps on this call, we might think, should we make a decision? And then you feel kind of guilty. Well, can you? Because not everyone's on the call. And, but what happens if they don't like the decision? Oh, my goodness. So you think, I'll be really respectful. I'll minute it first, and then we'll just decide next week. Of course, that never happens. It just sort of slips away. And then people think, well, this group can't, get its shit together, if you'll excuse the common parlance.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So, from the Sociocratic process point of view, you have a facilitator operational leader and secretary, those roles elected. So I don't know whether this circle that I'm sat in for the first time today is actually a team within the Sociocratic network itself.
No,
And it isn't. So that is odd. Sociocratically, that is odd. And the domains are the domains that you've described as on the Mattermost are really should be aims circles. And I don't think the circles that you have on the Mattermost are in fact aims circles. They're cross-cutting circles. So they don't fit into the Sociocratic process either. So really the domains should follow the aims, then election from the aims circles to the mission team. And from the mission team, you get your vision team, your top circle, which is looking after the values of the brand, if you like. And that we could maybe look at reviewing, are the domains that we have actually helping us move towards a Sociocratic process? And are we holding elections, because it is our general circle, it's the membership who should be electing people to these to the circles. So I've tried to look at Laura's document, which I found quite like a garden of material.
Beautifully put.
We could do with reading and making clear how it all fits together, so our membership can actually look at that document, understand how it fits together. So to me, as a newcomer, I see a lot of confusion, but a lot of great work has actually gone on, and we could do with sorting that out, the wheat from the chaff.
I think that I'm wondering if we have consent to this on the call. There has been, and we should collate all the bits of work that have been done because they'll have value in them, but also out of respect to our fellow members, and then see whether something like Sociocracy can weave those things together in a relatively straightforward, understandable way to organise ourselves, which anyone could get their heads round if they had to spare 10 minutes travelling to work on the tube. That to me, we're not trying to worry this to the nth degree. We're not trying to explore all the what ifs that might happen. Just getting the basics in place will help enormously, because that will have taken us a long way in 1 month. Les, can you jump in the document when you have access to a big screen? Sorry, is that a hand up there I can see?
Sorry.
Sorry,
Yes, I'm sorry. This is all new to me, and I haven't read the document you're referring to. I just happened to wander into the room.
Pleasure to meet you.
Hi, John. Yeah, Graham's the only one I know. I may be incredibly naive, but I can't really understand why there's a problem. If individual groups are embedded holonically and they actually have identities as viable entities themselves, then I would have thought it would be a case of just appropriately designing resource bargains to enable whatever top level democratically agreed policies.
It does sound, yes. I think I would interpret you as saying it looks like we should be able to instantiate this relatively easily, because there's nothing that we're doing that's incompatible. However, from your description there, it sounds to me like you might be more fluent than, say, the typical member of the collective, in which case it looks easy to you because you can see it. You can hold up that lens and go, oh, yes, it's nearly there. But unfortunately, most of us have never worked in a sociocratic style environment ever, let alone any kind of. I would imagine most people haven't worked in any environment that doesn't have a CEO and a traditional command and control, except perhaps the odd cooperative here and there in Graham's experience. So this is kind of new, and we just need to hold that lens up so that everybody can see the collective through it, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And I would agree that the domains in Mattermost, please.
Yeah.
I don't really know what sociocratic is.
Marvelous.
We're
I mean,
in the
beauty with
world of beer. This is
Thanks, John.
viable.
Viable system.
Yes, Stafford beer.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that actually,
Negotiated autonomy. Marbles.
You know, holacracy. That's
I've heard
Yeah.
the term, but you know,
so sociocracy is interlinked, small interlinked teams that work together well, with a lot of different specifics added on.
but there's
Okay.
definitely a compatibility with Stafford Beer's viable systems model and sociocracy. There's more compatibility than incompatibility from my rough understanding of both. So we just need to codify this, chaps. I think is Graham. You have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think that the speaker there, sorry, I'm dreadful at names, sitting next to Mike and John.
Les, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I think, for me, he made an important point there in that the domains, as currently described, don't actually work.
Yeah.
I think that's a critical point. And I think that if we can redesign that structure so that it actually makes sense to people like me and to people like Les, I think that will help us a long way, because then I can see absolutely how you can just have, you can then elect people to represent each of those domains or whatever, and then bang, you've got a decision-making group that is empowered to actually get on and do the job. And that
I could, yeah.
So my question, I guess, leading out of that is, how does that map on to the legal structure that we've got as a cooperative, which has a board of directors? Is that elected group of domain representatives, if you want to call them that, does that equate to the board of directors of the cooperative?
I don't believe that is the case. And I say that because the fiduciary duty of running the company is distinct from executing the mission. And moreover, it would amaze me if anybody elected me to run an American company when I have no understanding of American company law. And therefore, I would imagine equally people in the US or other non-British regions around the world would want to step up and become a director of a UK company, given that it's a volunteer role here. There's no paid roles here. So just the gap to understand the fiduciary duty. Having people like Sean on the board is easy because he does this, he knows these duties inside out. Me and Steve and Laura have got up the curve, but it's helped that we have been immersed in UK company law for many years. So I would keep the distinction there.
Yeah, we have interim management group, right? Supposedly.
We do as the only governance decision we've made to make it look like we still have good governance. And it was a temporary make do, which turned into a long term make do, and we need to bring the IMC to a.
Yeah, so it just looks. Sorry, thank you very much. And Graham, it looks to me like your IMC is in fact your mission circle, and you can have the fiduciary board as a separate team that are charged to look after the legal responsibilities, and and there's a way of double linking across to the IMC. The AIM circles would elect to the mission circle, to the IMC, and we would elect to a top circle, which would be looking after the brand, looking after the values. And we could invite other like-minded organizations to send their representative to sit on that vision circle. So we start to sort of work towards meeting the long-term aims and objectives and vision of Digital Life Collective. I would be happy to help and work with others in a shadow board to make this kind of make a mapping. If only we knew someone with some Kuma experience, I could.
Well, Christina would definitely be on this call, but I think she's been run ragged this week at the Internet Archive. But she'll be catching up with me next week for sure, because she just wants to make sure this happens as well. She considers herself to be part of this month-long effort to get this sorted for sure. So it sounds to me like we have the bones of a plan. Perhaps it wouldn't be, I can't imagine that this little group would want to meet every day for August, because I wouldn't. But perhaps if we could, as our calendars and vacation allows, make Friday at this time, if we can, and meantime move this along asynchronously in the Google Doc, so that by the middle of August we've got a complete understanding of what we're trying to do, and by the end of August we've done it.
That's also possible. The other thing I didn't think I'd get so far as suggesting this today, but I would volunteer to put some training on a one-to-one or in a collective on facilitating operational leader and secretarial roles within the Sociocratic framework, so we start to lift the skills of all of us who are participating. That, my friend, is a most beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
Wow, have I been promoted?
I'm not sure there's the governance in place to answer that question.
Wow, I get a badge.
Friend of Phil.
So let me ask you, Philip, who's do we take minutes of this meeting?
Well, we already are.
Is there an operational leader?
Of this actual project? Yes. You mean you want a dog food here? Oh my God, that's too radical.
Well, Jim's I will be asking the operational leader as we speak.
Oh yeah, there's the operation. It's on Jim's lap.
We do generally have a guide and a scribe here. The leader and the note taker. But if we're good, we all take notes in the document at the same time.
Well, yeah. Maybe we could review whether that has actually been a successful strategy.
So this time, Philip broke the model a little bit, sorry, because we had the notes doc, and then he had the other doc, and then we got the history doc as well, so we got 3 docs.
And 3. Second a minute, the minutes for the meeting, which is always in the same document. Then we've got a G-doc, particularly for this project. And what was the third one?
The history doc that Laura put together.
Oh, I see. There's loads of other docs. We're linking all of those from this project doc.
Steve, yes.
Sorry, I have made some notes in the notes doc, and then I have put some notes into the Self-Organising and Governance Month doc. But in that doc, they don't look like notes, because it's structured as a document rather than meeting minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit more complicated.
So can we identify that going forward as a next step, we need to develop or improve our logbook, as it's called in the Sociocratic parlance, and it's called a logbook because it has to link to all these various documents and spreadsheets.
I've got little bits, I've got hair on the back of my neck standing up as you're talking, Les. Did you know you have this effect on me?
Look.
This is what we need. This is it. This is what we need.
So one of us, we would if we ran an election, a Sociocratic election, we would elect a logbook keeper from our number. So maybe at the next meeting next Friday, we will just sort of migrate to a more formal Sociocratic process. So we all get a feel of it and elect operational leader, facilitator, logbook keeper for the month of August. So we, time bound. And one of the roles for the logbook keeper would be to sort of tidy up and edit and make accessible a document that all our members could refer to and at least navigate their way around.
And do you look for volunteers for those 3 roles?
No, we run a sociocratic election, Philip. Have you ever had one?
Do you not need to volunteer to be elected? Because
No.
What happens if you volunteer somebody who desperately does not want to be a local keeper?
I'm not going to tell you now how it works. You're going to have to come to the next meeting and see how an election works. Okay.
Bloody looking forward to it already. Marvelous.
So we have some next steps.
We certainly do, and as you can see from Steve's new laptop, which for some weird design decision has the webcam at the bottom of the screen, hence you can see his fingers on it.
Oh, right. Well, that's good.
As you can see, he's making great minutes in the minutes doc.
I thought he was agreeing wildly.
Awesome, gentlemen. Right, well, I shall see you asynchronously until we synchronise next Friday. Any other points before we bring this meeting to a close?
Just quickly, I'm going to have to give apologies. I'm away next week for the whole week, which is unfortunate, really. But there you go. So
have a lovely holiday.
Friday week, I'll be back. Yeah.
You still may get elected in your absence.
Well, that's quite possible. Yeah.
You don't get away with it that easy.
I'm away as well.
Well, that's easy. That's two. Only one to go. Okay.
I shall post this video online and share the link to it as quickly as possible, so our friends in this group that couldn't make the very first call will be able to watch this bit as well as read the minutes.
Okay.
Fantastic. Have a great weekend, all.
Great stuff.
Right.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.